Hello everyone, this is part 7 of What If Naruto Was in High School, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist. To see more, comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Sasuke and Sakura separated, but not before Sakura could grab her new boyfriend's hand. They returned back to their friends, who had apparently been watching them the entire time. So, I guess my name is Susan, Sakura said as she walked over to her friends. Well, we couldn't tell you we nominated you. You'd probably get your name removed from the ballot, even if you'd already won. Ino said as explanation. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what's up with you two? Ino motioned to their hands that were intertwined. I'm not allowed to hold my girlfriend's hand, Sasuke asked. Girlfriend? Ino exclaimed. When did this happen? During our dance, Sakura said with a slight blush. Ino gave her a, we'll talk about this later, look. Sakura looked around as if realizing something for the first time. Where's Lee? Well, he saw UK Sasuke and Hinata started but trailed off. And what? Sakura prompted her friends. And he ran off. He went out through the lobby. Tenten said. Sasuke, Sakura began. Just hurry back, Sasuke said, understanding that Sakura needed to talk to Lee. As Sakura stepped outside, into the cool night air, she saw someone sitting slumped over on one of the benches in front of the parking lot. That someone was Rock Lee. Sakura approached him slowly. Lee, I think we need to talk, she said quietly. When he didn't respond, she slid onto the bench next to him. Lee, she asked. Do not worry about me, Sakura. It is clear that Sasuke is your knight in shining armor. Lee said dejectedly. Lee, I'm really sorry. I guess when I accepted your invitation to homecoming, I didn't explain that I was accepting it as a friend. I was too caught up in what was going on. Sakura said. I'm really sorry. I hope you can forgive me. Sakura, how can I not forgive you? Lee said. It is clear that I thought things differently from you. I should be the one who is sorry. I guess we both forgive each other then, okay? Sakura asked. Yes, okay, Lee said. Sakura pulled him into a friendly hug. So do you want to go back into the gym now? There's still about 40 minutes left of the dance, Sakura said. If it is okay with you, I'd rather stay out here, Lee said. Sakura looked at him uncertainly before saying, okay, Lee. If that's what you really want. I guess I'll see you later, okay? Sakura said as she stood up and walked back inside. She felt awful, but was glad that she had talked to Lee about everything. She'd have to think of some way to make it up to him. She walked back into the lobby, and saw Sasuke waiting for her by the gym door. Took you long enough, he said with a smirk. Sorry, Sakura said. She didn't want to recount her conversation with Lee to Sasuke. She'd ask her friends later how they could do something for him. Are you ready to go back in? Sasuke asked her, this time him reaching for her hand. She wrapped her fingers around his as she nodded. He led her back into the gym. Sakura, you're back, Ino exclaimed as she pulled away from Shikamaru for a moment. We were talking, and we're all going to Hinata's after this, okay? Sure, that sounds good, Sakura said. Okay then, Ino exclaimed as she stepped back towards Shikamaru, and he wrapped his arms back around her waist. The next song came on, and many squeals and yeses could be heard from across the gym. It was Soldier Boy. Practically everyone in the gym knew the dance, although the guys wouldn't admit it. The girls, however, were back up at the front of the gym as soon as the first few notes came on, already starting to dance. They followed the beat, and didn't miss a step. The guys just stood, watching them from behind. They were somewhat glad that they hadn't been dragged up there to do this dance as well. When the song ended, the girls came back giggling and chatting excitedly about the song, and the dance. They all went back to their boyfriends, or date in Tenten's case, arms. The rest of the dance flew by, and soon it was time for the last song. It was the most awaited song, but also the most dreaded. Sasuke walked up to Sakura and wrapped his arms around her waist. Hers immediately flew up to his neck. Sakura felt as if she never wanted this dance to end, and she also felt like she and Sasuke were the only two people in the entire gym. She lost all track of time, and all she knew was the person whose chest her head was laying on. Sasuke felt the same way. Ino rested her head on Shikamaru's shoulder, and he gazed down at the blonde head that was resting there and smiled, pulling her closer to him. She just smiled. Hinata's head was resting on Naruto's chest, and her eyes were shut tight. She never wanted this moment to end. Naruto rested his chin on her head, and shut his eyes as well. They looked like they were in heaven. Tenten and Neji were dancing somewhat away from each other. Her arms were tightly wrapped around his neck, and his were firmly around her waist. He smiled at her, and she smiled back. It was obvious that they'd be a couple soon, even if it wasn't obvious to them. When the song ended, each couple parted slowly, wishing that it wasn't over. Sasuke grabbed Sakura's hand, as did the other boys to the girls they were with, and they headed towards the throng of people who were exiting the gym. Sakura stopped when they entered the lobby. "We have to go grab our shoes," Sakura said as she grabbed Hinata's hand and dragged her over to the shoe pile. Of course theirs just had to be on the bottom. Tenten and Ino, who had taken theirs off later on, had an easy time finding theirs. Once Sakura and Hinata had extracted the shoes from the pile, they slipped them on and walked back over to where the guys were leaning against the window. "Are you ready to go?" Sasuke asked them. "Yeah, I'm exhausted," Sakura said with a slight sigh. "Come on then," Sasuke said, grabbing her hand. With that, the four couples exited the lobby and made their ways to the limo. "Come on then," Sasuke said, grabbing her hand. With that, the four couples exited the lobby and made their ways to the limo. Sakura snuggled up close to Sasuke when she sat down in the limo. She was so tired she was falling asleep. The events of the night had really worn her out, and even now they replayed in her mind like a movie. She didn't even try to think of how things could have worked out better, so she just shut her mind off and enjoyed the warmth coming from Sasuke's body. His arm was around her waist, pulling her as close to him as possible. Ino looked over at her friend and smiled as she leaned back into Shikamaru's arm, which was tightly held around her shoulder. She rested her head on his shoulder and sighed slightly, so that it was barely audible, and rested her head on his shoulder. Hinata couldn't even see her friends who were around her. All she knew was her and Naruto, who was currently whispering sweetly into her ear. She blushed as he did so, enjoying it very much. Tenten's head was on Neji's shoulder, and his arm was draped lightly on hers. She was extremely happy, and thought that the only thing that could make her any happier would be having Neji finally ask her out. But she knew him, and knew that he wasn't a spontaneous person. He probably had everything mapped out in his head, and he was going step by step or something. She sighed the thought off and went back to being content. At Hinata's house, the boys had walked the girls to the door, and had come inside for a few minutes, but were scared off eventually when Hinata's father came downstairs. Well, everyone except Neji was scared off, that is. He stayed a little bit longer, talking with Tenten a little bit away from the other girls. They had all changed into their pajamas by then, Neji leaving the room to allow them to do so. Ino glanced over at them. "What do you think they're talking about?" she whispered to Hinata and Sakura. "Ino, that's not any of our business," Hinata said back. "Oh, come on, Hinata, I know you want to know," Ino said, rolling her eyes. "What do you think, Sakura?" "Your guess is as good as mine," Sakura said. "He needs to ask her out soon," Ino said as she popped a Hershey's K into her mouth, savoring the sweet chocolate. "I agree with you there," Sakura said, then she turned to face Ino, with a gleam in her eye. "I know. Let's help him out a little bit." "I don't like the sound of this," Hinata said, glancing at her cousin and best friend. "Oh, come on, Hinata," Sakura whisper exclaimed, "we helped you and Naruto out and everything turned out fine." "She's right, you know," Ino said, and Hinata couldn't deny it. "Just promise that you aren't planning anything drastic, okay?" Hinata asked her friends. "Okay, nothing too drastic. But let's not have Tenten find out before they're together. She really would K us," Sakura said. "Actually, she might just K us even when they're together." "Okay, so let's start planning then," Ino said. Sakura nodded in agreement, and Hinata just sighed in defeat. At least they wouldn't do anything too drastic. Then again, drastic to Ino and Sakura was completely different from drastic to Hinata. By the time Neji had left, the girls had a small plan all cooked up for the couple. Okay, what are you two planning? Tenten said as she came over to her friends after Neji had left. What are you talking about? Ino asked with an innocent look on her face. Ino, I've known you for too long, don't try to pull something over on me, okay? Tenten said. She then turned to Sakura. What is it? We still don't get what you're talking about. Sakura said, making her face look totally clueless. That's bull, but I'm just going to ignore it for now. I'll figure it out eventually. And no, I'm not going to question Hinata, whatever it is, I'm not quite sure if I actually do want to know. Tenten said. Alright, then let's change the topic. Sakura said. I feel really bad about what happened with Lee, and I want to do something for him. Like maybe get him a date to the movies or something. Do you guys know anyone who might be interested? Well, there are a few girls who kind of like him, but I'm not sure if they'd be good candidates. Tenten said thoughtfully. Why not? Sakura asked. In case you haven't noticed, Forehead, even though Rock Lee was, and possibly still is, your biggest fanboy, doesn't mean he didn't have a few fangirls of his own. Ino said. I know that, pig. Sakura snapped at her friend. Well, Sorai. Ino snapped back. The Toe girls glared at each other and turned their backs to face the other, so they were basically sitting back to back with their arms crossed over their chests. Tenten and Hinata ignored them and continued pondering the problem. What about that girl Susan? Hinata suggested. She does seem nice. Tenten shook her head. I've seen her hanging around with Sasuke's fangirls. There's no way she'd go on a date with Lee, no matter how nice she is. Okay, so she's a no. Hinata said softly as she went back to thinking. What about that girl Emily? Tenten asked. Way too annoying. Can you imagine her and Lee together? Sakura asked. She and Ino had rejoined the conversation. Yeah, they'd be trying to talk over each other, with Lee screaming about youth. Ino said. Okay, so she's a no, too. Tenten said. This is going to be harder than I thought. Sakura said with a sigh as she fell back onto her pillow. Oh, Hinata said suddenly. What is it? Sakura asked, rolling over onto her stomach and propping her head up on her elbows. Well, I have a cousin who might be interested. Hinata said. Really? Ino said. Who? My cousin Akane. She's Neji's sister. Hinata said. Neji has a sister. The other three girls exclaimed, shocked. Where has she been all of this time? Tenten asked her friend. She goes to a special boarding school. I think Neji went there for about a year, but he didn't like it and he left. She's coming for a visit this weekend. Hinata explained. She saw a picture of Lee with the guys once, and said she thought he was cute. I think we have a candidate. Ino exclaimed. I think we have a candidate. Ino exclaimed. So, Hinata, how old is she? Tenten asked her friend. She's a year younger than us, meaning that she's a freshman. Hinata said. I honestly don't think Lee will mind. Sakura said. Yeah, he'd be happy to just get a date. Ino said. Ino. Sakura exclaimed. Lee's a really nice guy. Alright, sheesh. Ino said. Do you think she'd agree to it? Tenten asked. I think so, but let me check. Hinata said. She pulled out her cell phone and dialed a number, then pointed to her ear. Akane, is that you? Hinata asked. Okay, how have you been? That's good. I've been good too. Well, listen, I called to ask you a question about your visit this coming weekend. Do you remember that guy Rock Lee? Yes, he's the one from the picture. Well, we wanted to know if we could try to set you up with him. He actually doesn't know about it yet. We were thinking we could say you wanted someone to show you around while you were back in town for the weekend. Okay, sounds good. Bye. See you this weekend. So, Ino asked expectantly. She said she'd love to. All we need to do is get Lee to agree to it. Hinata said. This is great. Sakura exclaimed. I'm so glad I can do something. I've felt so bad about everything that happened between us. And he was so good about it, too. Okay, so who's going to ask him? Hinata asked her friends. I guess I will. Sakura said when all of her friends looked at her. Well, it was your idea. Tenten pointed out. Yeah, I just feel weird asking him to do something with another girl, after I did all that to him. Sakura said. But he'll know that you really are sorry. Hinata said. Yeah, I guess you're right. I'll call him tomorrow, okay? Sakura asked her friends. Perfect, they replied in unison, and then erupted into giggles. All right, Sakura said. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to sleep. Exhaustion has won out. I'm going to be so tomorrow. But we all will be. Isn't being sleep deprived the day after homecoming one of the best things? Ino asked in a kidding manner. Of course, Sakura said as she crawled into her sleeping bag. Now good night. Good night, Ino replied back in a syrupy sweet tone. Once Sakura had fallen asleep, Ino turned to her friends. Watch this, Ino said as she leaned over towards Sakura. Sakura, where's Sasuke? Sasuke, Sakura mumbled. Yes, Sasuke, Ino whispered into her ear. Where? Sasuke, Sakura mumbled. Sasuke, Sakura rolled over in her sleep, mumbling a few things that the girls couldn't understand. Finally she mumbled, "Ah, Sasuke, I love you too." The girls giggled at their friend's sleep talking. When'd you figure that out? Tenten asked Ino. 7th grade. Ino replied. You just whisper something in her ear, and she starts dreaming about it. She'll sleep talk, too. Really? Let me try. Tenten said happily as she crawled over to her friend. Sakura, look at the stars. Tenten whispered into her friend's ear. Stars. Sakura's brow wrinkled in her sleep, leaving the girls guessing that the setting of her dream was changing. Sasuke, they're beautiful. The girls giggled again, and Tenten said, wow, it really does work. I don't think we should do it again, though. Hinata said, looking at her friend. If she wakes up, you know she'll K us. Fine, Hinata, Ino said, but you know that she sleeps like a log. Yes, but on the off chance that she does wake up, Hinata said, trailing off. Point, Ino said. Well, I'm going to follow Forehead's example and go to bed as well. I'll see you guys in the morning. Night Ino, Tenten said. Good night, Hinata said quietly, not wanting to wake their already sleeping friend. Tenten waited for 10 minutes until she was sure that Ino was asleep before she turned to Hinata. So what are they really up to? Tenten asked her friend. I promised that I wouldn't tell you. Hinata said a bit nervously. She didn't like having to keep the other two girls' plan from her friend. Tell me this, then, does it involve Neji and I? Tenten asked. Hinata hesitated for a moment, wondering if this would count as telling, and then quickly nodded her head. I thought as much. Well, as long as they don't do anything too drastic, nothing awful should happen. I'll just have to be on the lookout for them. Tenten said with a sigh. I guess we should be getting to sleep, too, or else those two will have us up a lot sooner than we want to be woken up. I agree, Hinata said. And don't worry, Hinata, I won't tell them that I know anything at all. I'll act like I'm still clueless and suspicious. Tenten said as she rolled over onto her side. Thanks, Tenten, Hinata said back warmly to her friend. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the night in her head. She'd had the best time with her friends, and of course, Naruto. Her life seemed to be going perfectly for once. She wondered how long this state of happiness would last in her life and her friends' lives. Her life seemed to be going perfectly for once. She wondered how long this state of happiness would last in her life and her friends' lives. The next day, Lee stared up at the ceiling, his mind going over the events of the previous night. He'd really liked Sakura, and when it all came down to it, she didn't like him. He got his heart broken. Period. He'd thought that he'd finally found someone that actually liked him. Turns out he was wrong. At least Sakura had been nice to him. In the past, most girls laughed at him when he asked them out. He should have realized that Sakura still liked Sasuke. It was obvious that her answer to the dance had been something just to tick him off. And it had worked. Sasuke had been majorly pissed. But Sakura hadn't realized how much he had liked her. Their views had been completely different. And seeing her K Sasuke during that dance, it had hurt. It had hurt a lot to find out that way. At least she knew that he had been upset. Shed apologized, tried to make things better. He let her think that everything was alright. It really wasn't. Lee rolled over and looked at the clock. It was already 12 in the afternoon. He'd been just laying there for some time. Just as he was about to get up, his cell phone went off. Who would be calling me now? Lee wondered as he picked up the phone and looked at the screen. The name that leered up at him was Sakura's. He contemplated not answering it for a minute, but decided against it. There had to be a good reason for her to call him. Hello. Lee. Sakura's voice came through loud and clear. Yes, Lee replied. It's Sakura. How are you doing? She asked him. Good, he replied, lying through his teeth. That's good. I was calling to ask you something. Sakura said. Okay, what is it? Lee asked, somewhat curious now. Well, Hinata has this cousin who's coming into town this weekend. She used to live around here. Maybe you'd know her, she's Neji's little sister, and her name is Akane. She goes to a boarding school now. Well, anyways, she's coming into town this weekend, we were hoping you'd show her around. We would do it ourselves, but we already have plans made. Sakura explained. You want me to show her around? Lee asked. He wondered why they wanted him to do it. Why couldn't Neji show his little sister around? They probably were all going out together or something. Yes, if you could. Sakura replied. Well, okay, if you want me to, Lee said, trailing off. He wasn't so sure about this. Okay, great, Sakura exclaimed. How about you pick her up around 12 next Saturday? Sure, Lee said. Thanks so much, Sakura said. Well, I'll see you later, Lee. Bye. Bye, Lee said as he heard the phone click off. What's this all about? With the girls. All three of the girls were huddled around Sakura, trying to listen to her conversation with Lee. As soon as she hung up the phone, they looked at her eagerly. Sue? Ino asked. He said he'd show her around. Sakura said with a triumphant little smile. Really? Hinata asked. This is going to work out great. Tenten exclaimed. If he ends up liking her. Sakura said. I thought it was just going to be one date. Hinata asked, uncertainly. Well, I think this could turn out to be more. Sakura said, and Ino nodded, both of them having that gleam in their eyes. Let's just get them both through this one day. Tenten said. Okay. We just have one little problem. Hinata said. What? Sakura asked, turning her attentions to her friend. Well, you know how protective Neji is of me. Hinata asked her friends. Ino said as she nodded. Well, imagine how he is with his sister. Hinata said. Oh, this is going to be a problem. Sakura said, realizing how protective Neji was with Akane. Right, Hinata said. All we have to do is keep him busy all day, so he doesn't find out. And at least, keep him away from Lee and Akane. Ino got a look in her eye, and turned to Tenten. I know exactly how we can do that. Why are you looking at me like that? Tenten asked, somewhat afraid of her friend at the moment. You can ask Neji on a date. Sakura exclaimed, having realized what Ino was thinking. What? Tenten exclaimed more than asked. They're right, Tenten. Hinata said. It's probably one of the only ways we can keep him busy long enough. Tenten looked at her friends' begging faces. Fine. I'll ask him out. Yay. Sakura and Ino exclaimed at the same time, while Hinata was thinking, and they're already two birds with one stone. What am I asking him to do? Tenten asked. How about dinner and the movies? Ino suggested. She was hoping that this would actually work. It hadn't been part of their plan, but when life hands you lemons, make lemonade. Fine. I'll ask him later, okay. Tenten asked with a sigh. Sure, she liked him, but she didn't want to be the one doing the asking. Okay, but we'll know if you didn't. Sakura warned her friend. Don't think I won't ask Sasuke. And besides, if you don't, you'll ruin the entire plan. Okay, Tenten said. I won't try to get out of it. I know that you and Ino will hunt me down with torches and pitchforks if I don't ask him. Torches and pitchforks? Ino asked, thinking for a second, more like blush and eyeliner. Tenten glared at her friend. So she didn't put on makeup too much, but she did put lip gloss on at the least. Okay, that's enough, Ino. Hinata said in a quiet but somewhat forceful voice. She wasn't letting them get into an argument now. Tenten and Ino's fights were nothing like Ino and Sakura's fights. Tenten could hold a grudge. Fine, Ino said with a giggle. Okay, Operation Lee and Akane is a go. Sakura said while her friends laughed. Okay, Operation Lee and Akane is a go. Sakura said while her friends laughed. The next day. Well, we're all going to go to class. Sakura said as she grabbed Sasuke's arm, Ino grabbing Shikamaru's, and Naruto being the one to grab Hinata's arm, totally clueless as to why they were leaving, and practically dragged them away from Tenten and Neji. What's that all about? Neji asked Tenten as he walked with her to her locker. Well, Tenten said, trying to find the right way to say what she was thinking. What is it, Tenten? Neji asked her. Well, I was wondering if maybe you wanted to go to lunch and a movie on Saturday. Tenten asked with a blush. Lunch and a movie this Saturday? Neji asked, thinking it over. Well, my little sister is coming back into town, but I suppose I can show her around on Sunday. Sure. What time were you thinking? I was thinking maybe around 11-ish. Tenten said, hoping that she and Neji would be gone before Lee got anywhere near Neji's house. Okay, that works for me. Neji said. Okay, then. Tenten said. So, I didn't know that you had a little sister. Tenten opened her locker after having spun the combination lock. Neji said. She's a year younger than me, but she goes to a boarding school. Really? Tenten asked. Why? She had been curious as to why ever since Hinata had told her that Akane went there. I'm not sure, really. Neji said as he leaned up against the locker by Tenten's. I went there for one semester a while ago, but I didn't like it at all, so I left. Akane seems to like it there, so she still goes there. We hardly see her, though. Oh, Tenten said. She couldn't believe that Neji was going to give up spending time with his sister just to go on a date with her. It was totally shocking. She s her locker shut as Neji took a step and turned to wait for her. They then made their way to homeroom. After school, on the phone. So, did you ask him? Sakura asked eagerly before Tenten could even say hello. She was anxious to know if her friend had kept her promise to ask him or not. Yeah, I did, Tenten said, sounding a bit annoyed. Sakura and Ino were going to drive her up a wall with the way they were acting. They'd kept looking at her in the limo suspiciously, but hadn't said anything because the guys were there. Okay, good, Ino exclaimed. She mentally high-fived Sakura, and congratulated herself on a job well done. What time is he going to be leaving his house? Hinata asked, more concerned about Neji leaving on time than Sakura and Ino's plan. He said he's picking me up at 11, so I'm assuming 10:45-ish. Tenten said. So he'll be out of there an hour and 15 minutes before Lee comes to get Akane. Sakura said, doing calculations in her head on how much time they'd need to get Akane ready. They should have just enough. Right, now if my part of your scheme is done, I have homework that needs doing. Tenten said with a sigh. Wait, you're going to do your homework? Ino asked, shocked. Tenten hadn't done her homework in over a month. Yeah, I figure that if I keep not doing homework, my grades are going to slip by more than one letter grade. So I guess I should actually do some of it. Tenten said as way of explanation. Okay, then. Ino said. I guess we'll talk to you later. Bye guys. Tenten said as she hung up the phone. What's that about? Ino asked her friends. I don't know, Ino. Hinata said. Maybe she's upset about you guys not trusting her to do what she said she would. I guess that could be it. Sakura said, sounding a bit unconvinced. Well, I'm going to go, too. Tenten has a point. We do have a lot of homework tonight. Hinata said a bit nervously. Okay, then. Ino said. Bye. Hinata said as she hung up the phone. She knows we're up to something with her and Neji. Ino said as soon as the quiet friend had hung up the phone. Yeah, and I bet she quizzed Hinata about it. Sakura said. Exactly. Ino said. We have to stay under her radar for a little bit. I'm sure we can do that. Sakura said thoughtfully. We can do little things to work on the plan. Things that Tenten won't even notice until it's too late for her to stop us. My thoughts exactly. Ino said. So what's up first? Well, I was thinking, Sakura said. The girls stayed on the phone for an hour longer planning out little things that they could do. Saturday. Okay, I think that does it. Ino said as she put the final curl in Tenten's hair. Despite Tenten's refusals, Ino had managed to coax her into having her hair half up, half down. The top half would be in two small buns, the bottom half in loose curls. She was wearing dark denim jeans, with a light pink wrap-around baby doll top. Sakura had forced her out of her tennis shoes, and into a pair of black flats, which were surprisingly comfy. Wow, Tenten said as she looked in the mirror. She had protested when her friends had forced this outfit on her, but now she realized why they had. It looked amazing, and it was something that she wouldn't normally have picked out. Like it? Sakura asked her friend. This was one of their ideas from the night before. They just had to make Tenten look stunning in different ways. Having her hair half down was one of those ways. Neji had never seen her with her hair any way down at all. He should look twice when he saw Tenten today. I'm not sure Neji will recognize her. Hinata said with a smile. Okay, so next up. Who's going to stay with Tenten while two people head over to Neji's? Hinata has to go. She's our ticket in. Ino said. I'll stay with Tenten. Sakura volunteered. Why does someone have to stay with me again? Tenten asked. So that way Neji isn't suspicious. Ino said matter-of-factly. But won't he be suspicious if one of you is here and not the rest? Tenten asked. Just tell him that Hinata and I had to leave. Say that Daddy asked me to help my mom out at one of the flower shops or something. Ino said. And Hinata's father made her come home. That always works. Okay, then. Tenten said. Neji was going to find it suspicious that Ino had to work. Ino anything except shop in his mind. The excuse for Hinata was believable though. I guess I'll see you guys later tonight, then. Just to double check, what time is your movie over? Hinata asked. She was nervous that Neji would catch them helping Akane out with Lee. It was bad enough that he would have to find out sooner or later. It should be over around 4. Tenten said. That's plenty of time for Lee and Akane to hang out. Okay, then. Ino said. We're off. She looped her arm through Hinata's, and dragged her friend out the door. Okay, then. Ino said. We're off. She looped her arm through Hinata's, and dragged her friend out the door. Tenten sighed as she watched them go. I feel bad for Akane. Ino's going way overboard today. Maybe just a little bit. Sakura said. You have to admit, though, you look great. Yeah, I guess I do. Tenten said. I wonder what Neji will think. That you look beautiful. Sakura said without hesitation. And it was totally true. Tenten needed to wear her hair down more often. Well, half down at least. I hope so. Tenten muttered. She knew that her friends were cooking up some scheme to get him together, but she wanted him to ask her without Sakura and Ino's pushing and prodding. She was wondering if it would ever happen. How much time? 10 minutes. Sakura replied after glancing at her cell phone. She could tell that her friend was nervous, and she was a little bit nervous for her. This was just about the first guy that Tenten had fallen this hard for. It would be devastating if something happened to ruin things for her friend. Okay, Tenten said, taking a few deep breaths in an attempt to calm her nerves down, if only by just a little bit. Just then, the doorbell rang, sending Tenten into a frenzy. He's early, Sakura and Tenten exclaimed at the same time. I'll get the door, okay Tenten. Sakura asked her friend. You calm down, and come to the stairs when I call you, okay? Tenten only nodded in response, trying to compose herself. Sure, she and Neji hung out just about every weekend, but this was different. This was a date. This made everything different. Sakura opened the door to find Neji standing there, in jeans and a dress shirt, which was unbuttoned and untucked, revealing the white undershirt he had on. Is Tenten ready? He asked Sakura. He didn't seem nervous at all. Let me get her, Sakura said as she backed up and walked to the bottom of the stairs. She then proceeded to scream up the staircase to her friend. Ten. Neji's here. Tenten appeared at the top of the stairs, looking totally composed, very unlike how she'd looked minutes before. Sakura snuck a look at Neji to see his reaction, and saw that his eyes were trained on Tenten as she made her descent down the stairs. Hey Neji, Tenten said with a small smile. Hi, Tenten, Neji said without taking his eyes off of her. You look great. Sakura saw her friend's eyes light up. Coming from Neji, that meant a lot. Anyone knew that. Thanks, Tenten said. Well, you guys should go, Sakura said, ushering the two of them out the door. She was eager to join Ino and Hinata, and tell them what had happened. Yeah, I guess we should, Neji said. I'll call you later, Sakura, Tenten said to her friend as she and Neji walked out the door. You'd better, Sakura exclaimed happily as she watched her two friends get into the limousine. Now to call Ino. With Ino, Hinata, and Akane. Hello, Ino asked into her cell phone, which had just gone off, playing her ringtone of Big Girls Don't Cry. Ino, they just left, Sakura said into the phone. Really? And? Ino asked expectantly. He couldn't stop looking at her. Sakura said triumphantly. She and Ino had really done a good job on phase 1. Hopefully things would unfold quickly from here, if not, step 2 would soon go into action. Perfect, Ino said. Now get over here and help us out. With Neji and Tenten. So, where do you feel like eating lunch, Tenten? Neji asked her once they were in the car. Oh, it doesn't really matter, anywhere is fine. Tenten said happily. She was still a little bit nervous, but her hands weren't shaking as badly as they had been when she heard the doorbell ringing. She was actually starting to feel excited now. It was her first date with Neji without being around all of her friends. Okay, then, Neji said, as he instructed the driver to go somewhere. Tenten didn't really know place he told the driver to go, so she just sat back and wondered where it was that Neji was taking her. I think you'll like this restaurant, he said to her as he settled back down into his seat. What kind of food do they have there? Tenten asked curiously. You'll see when we get there. Neji replied with a slight smirk. Now I really wonder where we're going. Tenten thought as she looked at Neji from her seat. With Sakura, Ino, Hinata, and Akane. Hey guys, Sakura said as she walked through the doorway to Akane's room, after being directed there by the maid. Finally, you're here, Ino said. Sakura had said she was on her way 15 minutes ago, and it wasn't that far from Tenten's house to Neji's house. There's one thing that I forgot to ask, does he suspect anything? Nothing at all. About either thing, Sakura said with a smile. That's good news for us, Ino said. So, Akane, this is Sakura, Sakura, this is Akane. Sakura looked over and smiled at the girl who had the same eyes as Neji and Hinata, and brown hair that came to her mid-back. Hi, it's nice to meet you, Sakura said. It's nice to meet you, too, Akane said. Thank you guys so much for helping me out today. I really appreciate it. No problem, in a way, you're helping me out a lot, too, Sakura said. Well, then, I guess we're helping each other out, Akane said with a smile. So, I was looking through Akane's closet, and I was thinking that she should wear this, Ino said as she pulled out an outfit from behind her back. It was a light yellow top with a miniskirt that came to mid-thigh. She had some fishnet leggings underneath the miniskirt, giving the outfit a bit of an edgy look to it. Try it on, Akane. Akane obliged to Ino's command, and as she came out into the room, everyone just looked at her. It's perfect, Ino, Sakura said. She doesn't look too dressed up, or too underdressed. Yes, Akane, it looks wonderful on you, Hinata assured her cousin who was looking a bit skeptically down at her outfit. Ino had also found some white chunky wedge flip-flops that were white and matched the outfit perfectly. Now for hair and makeup, Ino exclaimed happily as she ushered Akane into the stool in front of her vanity. Now for hair and makeup, Ino exclaimed happily as she ushered Akane into the stool in front of her vanity. When Ino was done with Akane, she looked even prettier than before. Her hair was left down, as it had been before, but a light gold eyeshadow graced her eyes, and her lip gloss was a pale pink. She had a little bit of blush on her cheeks, but that was it. She looked stunning with such little makeup. Well, Akane said because everyone in the room was just looking at her. Hinata couldn't believe that her little cousin could look like that. It was probably because she'd never seen Akane all dolled up. She usually wore capris and a tank. You look wonderful, Hinata exclaimed, which was rare coming from her. She normally was quieter with her compliments. Really? Akane said, again, shocked. She wasn't used to wearing these kind of clothes. She owned them, sure, but she would have never had the confidence to pair them together. And she hardly ever wore makeup. It just took too long to put on when she was in a hurry, which she normally was. Yeah, it does. Sakura stood back, admiring her friend's work. They really should give makeovers for a living. They could get paid a fortune for it. Do you think Lee will think I look good? Akane asked, obviously worried. Lee, Ino asked. Every guy out there will think you look good. Not as good as me, of course, but good. Ino, Sakura said while rolling her eyes at her best friend. Just ignore her, Akane. Although she is right about one thing, every guy out there will think you look good. Akane smiled at her cousin's friends. She was extremely happy. Maybe she should wear clothes like this more often. Only one way to find out, and that would be to see what Lee thought of her today. Just then, the doorbell rang. Right on time, Ino exclaimed as she ran to the doorway of Akane's room, peering down the hall. Shortly after, the housekeeper came up the stairs and started heading towards them. Akane, your friend is here, she said upon entering the doorframe. Thank you, I'll be there in a minute, Akane said as she took one final look in the mirror before heading downstairs to meet Lee. With Akane and Lee. Hi, Akane said shyly as she walked down the stairs towards Lee. You must be Lee, right? Yes, I am Lee, Lee said while not taking his eyes off of Akane. He had no idea that Neji's sister was so, well, beautiful. You're Akane, correct? Yup, that's me, Akane said with a nervous smile. Well, let's go, then. I have a schedule all planned out for us today, Lee said. It was true, he'd been up the night before and had planned everything out so that they'd maximize the time of seeing Konoha. He'd also added in a movie so that Akane could see the new cinema that had been added. Okay, then, Akane said, taking the final steps towards Lee, and heading out the door. With Sakura, Ino, and Hinata. So, what are we going to do now? Hinata asked her two friends. Isn't it obvious? Ion asked Hinata, that gleam coming back into her eyes. We're going to spy on them. Sakura exclaimed happily. Is that really such a good idea? Hinata asked her friends cautiously. She knew that they were going to end up getting themselves into trouble somehow. Of course it is, Ino and Sakura exclaimed in unison. Hinata's sweat dropped as she followed her two friends out of the room. She had the feeling that this was going to end very badly. With Neji and Tenten. Okay, we're here, Neji said as the driver opened the door for them to get out. Where's here? Tenten asked curiously. She looked at the restaurant, and noticed that it was right over a lake. She wondered what kind of place it was. You'll see when we get inside, Neji explained as he took Tenten's hand and led her into the restaurant. When they got inside, Tenten looked around herself in awe. The ceiling was huge, and there were small balconies with tables at them, right next to windows so that they overlooked the lake. The place seemed kind of fancy, but Tenten didn't feel too underdressed. Leave it to Neji to take her to a nice restaurant. They walked up to waiter who was obviously waiting to seat them. Ah, Mr. Hyuga, you're here. Your table is right this way, the waiter said as he led Neji and Tenten towards the back of the restaurant, and towards a flight of stairs. He then proceeded to lead them up the stairs. Tenten looked around the bottom floor one last time before following Neji and the waiter up the stairs to one of the balconies. With Lee and Akane. Where are we going first, Lee? Akane asked curiously. Well, I was thinking that we could go take a walk around the park. In the past few months they've been doing some remodeling and added a fountain and a hedge maze to it, Lee explained to her. It sounds nice, Akane said, thinking of how the park had been upon her last visit to Konoha. It had been small, and not much to marvel at. But with these new additions to it, it was probably a lot nicer than before. With Sakura, Hinata, and Ino. Do you have a visual on their car? Ino asked into a walkie-talkie. Yeah, they're at some restaurant, Sakura replied. The girls had split up. Ino and Hinata going to spy on Akane and Lee, and Sakura going to spy on Tenten and Neji. You'd better wait outside, but make sure not to be seen, Ino said back to her friend. Roger that, Sakura said with a giggle. She was having fun using walkie-talkie talk. Okay, Hinata. It looks like Lee and Akane are heading for the park. It should be easier to spy on them right now than it is to spy on Tenten and Neji, so let's keep Sakura posted, Ino explained with a wide grin on her face. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.